If you've ever opened your banking app at 2 in the morning, heart pounding before the screen even loads, this story is for you. Not because it will tell you what number to hope for, but because it will show you why the number was never the thing you were afraid of. There's a reason your thumb moves toward that app without you even deciding to check it. A reason your chest tightens before the balance appears, even on the days you know, logically, that nothing has changed since yesterday. That reason has almost nothing to do with money, and everything to do with a story I want to tell you about a merchant named Tarek, who checked his ledger 17 times a day, and a monk who asked him a single question that took only 7 words to answer. We'll get to that question. First, you need to understand what Tarek was actually looking for every time he opened that ledger, because it wasn't what he thought. Before we go further, tell me in the comments, what time of day does the fear usually find you? Morning. Before you're even fully awake? Late at night, when the house is quiet and there's nothing left to distract you? You might be surprised how many people are nodding at their screens right now, recognizing the exact same hour. Tarek lived in a river town where the water moved slow and brown in the dry season and rose fast and violent when the rains came. He was a cloth merchant and a good one. Bolts of dyed cotton and indigo silk stacked to the rafters of his warehouse, a reputation that reached 3 towns in either direction along the river. By the standards of anyone who passed through his shop, Tarek was a wealthy man. He had more than his father had ever dreamed of holding. He had more than most of his neighbors would see in a lifetime. And yet Tarek could not sleep. Every evening, after the shop closed and the last customer had haggled their way out the door, Tarek would sit at a low wooden desk in the back room and open his ledger. He would run his finger down the columns of numbers, what came in, what went out, what remained, and he would feel, for a moment, something like relief. The number was still there. He had not lost it. He was, for now, safe. But the relief never lasted. By the time he blew out the lamp and lay down on his mat, the fear had already crept back in. What if the rains came early and ruined the dye shipment sitting on the docks? What if the merchant 3 towns over undercut his prices? What if the number, which felt so solid under his finger an hour ago, was actually as fragile as the reflection of the moon on the river? Beautiful, present, and gone the instant a cloud passed over. So Tarek would check the ledger again and again. 17 times some days, his assistant Anong once counted, though he never said this to Tarek's face. 17 times, the same columns, the same numbers, the same fleeting comfort followed by the same returning dread. He had built one of the most successful cloth businesses on the river, and he lived every single day with the exact same tight chest as the beggar who owned nothing at all. This is the part of the story you need to hold on to, because it's the part most people skip past. Tarek was not checking his ledger to see how much money he had. He already knew how much money he had. The number rarely changed by more than a little in the space of a day. He was checking his ledger to see whether he was safe, and no ledger, no matter how many times he opened it, could ever actually answer that question. He was asking a book of numbers to give him something numbers were never built to give. It was during the driest week of that year, when the river had shrunk to a brown ribbon, and merchants up and down the water were nervous about drought prices, that a monk came through the town. He was not a famous monk. He carried no reputation, no title, nothing that would have made Tarek look twice at him under ordinary circumstances. He simply arrived one afternoon, sat on the low step outside Tarek's shop, and waited without asking for anything. Tarek, who gave alms freely, he was not an unkind man, only a frightened one, brought the monk a bowl of rice and a length of plain cotton. He sat beside him for a moment, the way you sit beside a stranger on a long journey, not expecting conversation, but not minding it either. "You check your books often," the monk said. It wasn't a question. He had been outside the shop long enough to notice the pattern. Tarek's assistant coming and going with ledgers, the back room lamp burning long after the shop had gone dark. "A man has to know where he stands," Tarek said. "And where do you stand?" the monk asked. Tarek opened his mouth to answer with a number. He had it memorized, of course. The exact figure sat behind his eyes at all times, the way a name sits behind the eyes of someone deeply in love or deeply afraid. But something about the question stopped him. Where do you stand? Not how much do you have? Not what is your balance? Where do you stand? He found he didn't actually know. But what he didn't know, not yet, was that this single unanswered question would follow him for the rest of that week. Into the shop, into his sleep, into the space behind his ribs, where the fear usually lived. The rains held off. The dye shipment sat on the docks, and each day it sat, there was a day it could still be ruined, and each day Tarek walked down to check on it, running the same fingers over the same crates he had checked the day before, as if his checking might hold back weather that had nothing to do with him at all. The monk stayed in town, sleeping in the temple courtyard, eating whatever was offered, asking for nothing. Tarek noticed something odd about him in those first days. The monk owned, as far as anyone could tell, exactly one robe, one bowl, and a walking stick worn smooth by years of use. And yet he moved through the town with none of the tightness Tarek carried in his own shoulders. He slept easily on stone. He ate whatever was placed in his bowl without complaint or craving. There was nothing for weather or rivals or unpaid debts to threaten, because there was nothing stacked up that could be taken from him. Tarek found himself more than once quietly envious of a man who owned almost nothing. Each evening after the shop closed, the monk would be sitting on that same low step, and Tarek would sit beside him, and they would talk. Not about money at first, about the river, about the dry season, about Tarek's father, who had started the business with 2 bolts of cloth and a borrowed cart. Remember this detail, because it matters later. Tarek's father had died with almost nothing in his ledger, a modest amount, enough for a simple funeral and little else. And yet Tarek, sitting beside the monk one evening, found himself saying something he had never said out loud before. "My father was the calmest man I ever knew." The monk said nothing. He let the silence do, the work silence is good at doing. "He had a fraction of what I have," Tarek continued almost to himself, "and I never once saw him check anything 17 times a day." And this is where everything changed, not with a lightning bolt of realization, but with the quiet, uncomfortable recognition that his father's peace and his own wealth had absolutely nothing to do with each other. That, in fact, the wealth might be making things worse, not better, because more numbers meant more columns to fear losing, more crates on more docks that could be ruined by more rain. His father had owned a cart, 2 bolts of cloth, and nothing to check 17 times a day. Tarek owned a warehouse, a reputation, and a fear that had somehow grown in exact proportion to everything he'd built to protect himself from it. The two things had risen together side by side like a shadow that only gets longer the higher the sun climbs. More light, more shadow, never less. He began to watch himself the way you might watch a stranger, curious and a little unsettled. He noticed how his hand reached for the ledger before his mind had even finished the thought. He noticed that the relief, when it came, lasted about as long as it takes to exhale, and that the fear was always waiting on the other side of that exhale, patient, unbothered by how many times he'd already checked. The dye shipment arrived safely in the end. The rains held off just long enough. Tarek should have felt triumphant. Instead, he noticed something strange. The relief lasted about as long as it always did, which was to say, almost no time at all. By the next morning, some new worry had already taken its place. A shipment further down the river, a rumor about a competitor's prices, a debt owed to him by a customer who had gone quiet. He realized slowly, painfully, that there was no ledger entry that would ever end this. There was no number large enough to make the checking stop. He could double his warehouse, triple it, and he would simply be checking a bigger number with the same tight chest, the same 2 a.m. fear, the same 17 trips to the back room. On the evening before the monk was set to leave town, Tarek finally asked him the question he had been circling for days. He sat down on the step, and instead of talking about the river or his father, he simply said, "Tell me how to stop being afraid of the number." The monk was quiet for a long moment, long enough that Tarek wondered if he'd asked something unanswerable, something too large for a simple response. Around them, the town was settling into evening, lamps being lit in windows, the smell of cooking fires, a dog barking somewhere near the docks. Finally, the monk turned to him. "You're not afraid of the number," he said. "You're afraid of who you are without it." 7 words. That was the answer underneath the answer, the real shape of what Tarek had been running from every single time his finger moved down those columns. Not a fear of poverty, a fear of finding out that without the number, without the warehouse, without the reputation that stretched 3 towns in either direction, there might be nothing solid left standing where Tarek believed himself to be. That was the 7 words. You're not afraid of the number. You're afraid of who you are without it. Sit with that for a moment, because I promise you, it is not just Tarek's sentence. It might be yours too. Here's what that story is actually about, once you strip away the river and the cloth and the dry season. Tarek's checking was never really about money. It was about identity. Somewhere along the way, without ever deciding to, he had let his sense of being safe, of being someone, of having value in the world, attach itself to a number that could rise or fall with the weather, with a competitor's prices, with a stranger's unpaid debt. The number became the thing holding him together. And anything that becomes the thing holding you together will also become the thing you are terrified of losing. Checked and rechecked, morning and night, 17 times a day if that's what it takes to feel, for one more hour, like the floor beneath you is still there. That merchant is you. Every time you open your banking app hoping the number will finally make you feel safe instead of simply telling you what it has always told you. A figure, nothing more, that cannot actually answer the question you're really asking it. You are not checking your balance. You are checking whether you are allowed to feel okay today. And a number was never built to grant permission like that. It doesn't have the authority you've quietly handed it. This is what the old teachers meant when they spoke about attachment. Not attachment to money itself, which is neutral, just paper and digits, but attachment to the idea that a certain number is what stands between you and disaster, between you and worth, between you and safety. That attachment is the thing that keeps you up at 2 in the morning, not the balance, the grip. So what do you do with this practically tonight in your actual life? Not someday. Tonight. First, the next time you feel the pull to check your account out of fear rather than necessity, pause for 10 seconds before you do it. Just 10 seconds. In that pause, ask yourself Tarek's question. Turn toward yourself. Not, what's my number? But, what am I actually afraid of losing right now? Most of the time, you'll find it isn't the money at all. It's a feeling underneath the money that the checking can never actually reach. Second, write down, tonight, 3 things that give you a sense of being solid, of being someone, that have nothing to do with what's in your account. Not vague ideas, specific ones. A skill you have that no market crash can take. A person who would still answer the phone if you called with nothing to offer them. A quality in yourself. Your patience, your honesty, the way you show up for people. That existed before your first paycheck and will exist after your last. This is not a denial of money's importance. It is a reminder that you are not only the number, even though the number has been shouting loudly enough to make you forget that. Third, choose one checking ritual this week. One time you would normally open the app out of anxiety rather than actual need, and replace it with something physical instead. A walk around the block, 10 slow breaths, even just placing your hand flat on your chest and noticing that you are, in this exact moment, fed, housed, and breathing. Regardless of what any app says, you are training a different relationship with the pause between the fear and the number. That pause is where the freedom actually lives, not in the digits themselves. Picture Tarek years later, an old man now, sitting on that same low step outside a shop that had long since passed to Anong to run. The warehouse still stood, the ledgers still existed, but Tarek no longer opened them 17 times a day. He opened them once when there was something worth knowing, and then he closed the book and went to sit in the evening air, watching the river the way his father used to, without needing it to tell him anything about who he was. That was Tarek's answer. Finally lived instead of just heard. The number can tell you what you own. It was never going to tell you what you're worth. Those are 2 different ledgers, and only one of them was ever actually yours to keep. And if there is one sentence from all of this worth carrying with you tonight, worth writing on a scrap of paper and putting somewhere you'll see it, let it be this. You are not the balance in your account, and no amount of checking will ever make you more solid than you already are. If this story gave you even one moment of quiet tonight, there are more waiting for you here. More merchants and monks and quiet questions that cut straight to the heart of the things that keep us up at night. Next time, I want to tell you about a king who traded his crown for a single night of sleep, and what he asked for in return when he finally got it. Until then, walk gently, hold loosely.